Morning, children. It's Grandma Carla with more of the Littles. On Thanksgiving Day, the Littles and their friends went down to the basement to fix the broken window. The big family had left the house earlier that morning. The tiny people were able to move about easily without fear of being seen. They walked along the water pipe until they came to the stone window ledge where the broken window was. As they peered through the hole in the glass, everyone let out a sharp gasp. "No, it can't be," Uncle Nick said. "There are more mice outside on the patio than there were last night. There are more mice out there than I've ever seen in one place outside of Trash City." "There must be hundreds of them," said Lucy. "Are they fighting? It looks like they're biting each other." "Not biting, Lucy," said her father. "They're licking. That's how the fur on their backs is all pointed up into little spikes. That's from the hot honey that we poured on them. It might have scared them at first, but now they're back for more. They must like the sweet taste as much as we do." Sure enough, any mice that weren't cleaning their friends were running their long tongues over the cement patio. They were lapping up every last drop of honey. "I guess my idea backfired," Lucy said with a frown. "Now we have a bigger mouse problem than ever." As Lucy spoke, they heard a car door slam from the driveway on the other side of the house. The slam was followed by a series of sharp, barking sounds. "Uh-oh, the terrier," Mrs. Little whispered to her husband, covering her mouth with her hand in fear. He put his arm around her. As the tiny people watched, the dog came racing around the corner of the house. It pranced happily around the backyard. The sun shone brightly on its long black and white coat. "That's no terrier," exclaimed Mrs. Little. "It looks just like a little collie," said Lucy. "It's a Shetland sheepdog," said Uncle Pete. "They're raised for herding sheep. They're called Shelties." Suddenly, the dog noticed the huge number of mice. She let out 3 sharp barks and began running around the patio in a large circle. Some of the mice tried to run away, but the dog was closing the circle very quickly. As she ran around and around, the mice began to run in a circle as well. "I'll be darned," Uncle Pete said. "She's herding the mice." The frightened mice ran into the middle of the patio. There was a hole in the center for water to drain into after the rain. Now, instead of water, a constant stream of scurrying mice was pouring down into the drain. When the very last mouse had disappeared down the drain, the dog barked 3 more times and wagged her tail. She turned around and looked over at the tiny faces peering back at her from the hole in the basement window. Before the Littles and their friends had a chance to move, she ran right under the deck and stuck her long, pointy nose through the hole. Tom Little found himself 1 inch away from a huge, shiny black dog nose. For a split second, Tiny seemed to stand still as Tom and the dog looked at one another. Then it happened. The dog's long, wet, pink tongue lashed out and licked Tom from the tip of his shoes to the top of his head. He fell backward and landed on his rear end. He was soaking wet. The dog barked happily and wagged its tail. "Callie, Callie!" Henry Big ran into the yard, calling to his new dog. "What are you doing under the deck? Come on out here." Tom's furry new friend barked at him one more time and smiled a big, happy dog smile. She wiggled out from under the deck and ran back to Henry. The Littles and their friends watched as Mr. and Mrs. Big strolled around the corner of the house. The couple were close enough for the tiny people to hear them talking as they watched Henry and the dog running around the yard. "That Sheltie is a beauty," said Mrs. Big. "Who would have thought that the runt of the litter would have been the prettiest of the bunch? And because she was so small, she was free," Mr. Big said to his wife. "That's my favorite part." "Oh, George," Mrs. Big laughed. "Stop it. You know very well I'm good friends with the breeder, and she was happy to give Callie with us." "This dog is very nice," Mr. Big said, "but she wouldn't know how to catch a mouse if her life depended on it. Not like a terrier. Still, Henry seems to really love her, so I suppose it's the right choice, even if she'll never be a sort of rat dog. She's so friendly she would probably try to make friends with a mouse anyway." Or a little, whispered Lucy as she mussed up Tom's wet hair. During the rest of the morning, Mrs. Big cooked her Thanksgiving dinner, and Mr. Big watched parades on the television. Henry played with Callie until his mother called him inside to eat. The Littles, the Specks, and the Snippets spent the morning fixing the window. The first job was to get the big piece of glass that Lucy had left on the shelf when the mice attacked her. Tom had used one of Henry's old suction darts tied to a piece of string to pull the glass up off the shelf. After that, the work went quickly, and the window was neatly repaired. For the rest of the day, not one squeak was heard from the patio, and no one saw hide nor hair of even a single mouse. And here is the picture of all of the mice scurrying around the patio. And then here's Callie, the Sheltie, running the mice into the little hole that's a drain in the middle of the patio. And that's the end of chapter 12. And this is Grandma Carla, and I love you.